In 1966, I was working in shipping and forwarding, and it was a growing company, and we had great excitement and plans for the future. And somebody joined the firm and introduced a new client, and the new client was called Scientology. So we didn't know anything about it. Their head office was in Edinburgh, and what they wanted was a shipping and forwarding agent to organise all their exports to go to the United States, because they were in the mass production of books and they were shipping them all over the world, and they wanted somebody to look after that for them. Well, this was ideal for us, but after 2 or 3 weeks it began to be obvious we couldn't do it long distance. We couldn't instruct them what to do and they'd be in Edinburgh and we were in London. So it was decided that I profitably would take charge of the operation. So I went off to Edinburgh and I drove into Scientology every day and I organised these books into boxes and all the shipping. After 2 or 3 weeks, I was beginning to get them into a flow pattern. And suddenly on a Wednesday morning I turned up and there was kind of lots of buzz amongst the senior executives there. They had a major problem. Their treasurer had vanished, and he was the man who looked after their PAYE. Well, fortunately, from my experience, this was something I could easily do. So I stepped in. They had 100 employees on PAYE. For the next 2 or 3 weeks, I continued to help them until they got somebody in to do the work. In the meantime, the number of boxes went from 1 a day to 3 to 4 a day, weighing £100 each. All these were going out the door, beautifully packaged and sealed, and the export documents. And then we began to get queries, or I began to get queries from senior executives working for Scientology. Where are the books? What's happening to them? They weren't arriving in the States as we promised. Now, you can keep this up for a period of time. 3 months or 3.5 months after I was there, I began to get too many of these queries, and I was phoning London and I couldn't believe the stories. So after about 4 months, I closed my little office in the Scientology block and took the train and went to Liverpool. That was the warehouse where all these books were going. Now, I didn't realise, of course, that Scientology weren't stupid. Of course, they had 2 of their members of staff follow me. I didn't know that. You can imagine my total shock when I got to the warehouse and I was shown every single box which shipped from Edinburgh was sitting beautifully in this warehouse. No, it wasn't on an aeroplane on its way to the States. It hadn't left the United Kingdom. For the best part of 6 months, we'd been sending invoices, charging the full whack for shipping it by air. I was in a state of shock, really, because it wasn't something I expected. And then, of course, the chaps who'd been following me marched in from Scientology, and they discovered a slight problem. And it was very embarrassing. And that's when we discovered a member of staff who'd brought this contract in, knowing it was impossible to fulfill, but he could keep it running for long enough to get a good income out of it. And when it proverbially hit the fan, he'd scarper, and whoever was left could take all the blame. And we could not believe this. Sure enough, when we asked him into the office, he admitted that printed books from the United States, or before the United States from England, were practically impossible to import. Not only that, these were religious books. They hadn't been vetted, passed, or anything else, and there was nobody that was going to tell them, the United States government, that these should be allowed in. Now, of course, the people that we dealt with in Scientology had not been told there were any problems. They were living in cuckoo land, and so were we. What we ended up by doing, we chartered at our own expense an aeroplane, took the whole lot to Canada, and filtered it in somehow or other from there. And absolutely sure not a penny was made by us, and I was not going to participate in the costs involved in such a disaster. The lesson, in a sense, here was, it doesn't matter if everything looks good. You as an executive are responsible for it being good. And if it isn't, that is still your problem. And don't try to live in cuckoo land and hope that everything is going well. when most of the time you're actually hiding the crap and the bad news because you don't believe it yourself. Try and find a way out long before there is none. Thank you.